Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, racers. Start your engines and take your spotted pole position. We're about to take you for a blistering lap around the track with another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Now, in our lineup today, we've got a story for the new mums who've so much to worry about already, but there's a new piece of tech that perhaps might alleviate a little of the anxiety in a breastfeeding session. So that's a special one for you. If you're like me and you've had enough of the fleet of ridiculously enormous yank tank pickup trucks that seem to be dominating the roads these days, you'll enjoy the downsizing EV ute option that's hitting the market now. More on that very soon. And we'll look at a simple but ingenious solution to AI hogging all the bandwidth these days. It's cleverer than ripping up and replacing all the fibre optic infrastructure and will save billions of dollars. All that in good time, though. Let's welcome to the microphone our guide for today's tour. How are you doing, Matt?
Yeah, good, really good. And I've had a couple of interesting things during the week. There's a few different radio segments that I do every week, and some of them have people calling in, not all of them, because we're a bit too short with some segments, because you get one caller that calls in, that can take up 5 minutes of the segment, so not always. But someone rang in during the week and asked about pass keys. And they said, I keep seeing things pop up about a pass key. Should I say yes? Or first of all, they said, what is a pass key? And should I say yes? So I thought I'd just talk briefly about pass keys as opposed to passwords. Now, we're familiar vaguely with passwords. You remember some series of letters, numbers, whatever it might be, and of course they get more and more complex. You need a minimum number of characters now.
Yeah, look, I reckon if anyone doesn't know what a password is these days and the complications, they're just not switched on. They're not listening to this podcast.
They're not listening to this podcast, that's right. But they're getting so complex and you've got to change them so regularly.
Yeah.
And one thing we know that we as humans are not good at, and that's memory. We don't have the best memory. So remembering those different websites, those different sites we go to with all the different passwords. And I was a little bit naughty the other day. I was sitting in a cafe and I just kind of glanced over. There's a term for it apparently, I didn't realise, but glanced over someone's shoulder while I was working on their computer. Shoulder surfing is apparently the term for what I was doing. Didn't know I was doing that, but anyway, I couldn't help
what they were looking at was so interesting.
Well, I couldn't help but notice they were struggling with their
and
password.
After the fifth minute of staring over their shoulder and they looked at you went, oh, sorry.
Whoops, did you catch me? But they went to go to a website, they got their password wrong, reset password, they went through all the dance that you normally go through. Yeah. And I did notice, again, probably shouldn't have been watching, but I did notice that they had to go at their password. Sorry, you've used that password before.
And it was just password.
It was just
password one, password two.
I didn't watch the keyboard.
Password
I didn't go that far.
Okay.
I didn't try and steal their password. I thought, yep, I see what's happening.
Try 1, 2, 3, 4.
Again. So a pass key is basically using public key cryptography, and we're kind of familiar with that with banking, for example. It's probably the main thing we see a bit of public key cryptography in. What it does is basically a website, for example, you go to, stores a token on that website, and then when it says, can I have a pass key, can I use a pass key, it stores the other half of that token, if you like, and that's not exactly correct, but just think about it that way, the other half on your device, on your phone, on your computer, whatever it might be. So the next time you go to that website, it says, okay, I know this is James because that key there matches the key on my website. Those two are a match, everything's fine. So the first thing you think of is, well, I don't love that because if I lose my device, well, people can just go, happy days, I don't even need a password. I can have whatever I want off that particular site or those particular accounts. But it does check with some form of biometrics. So it might check facial ID, it might check fingerprint. So the obvious one people see is when they use a credit card on their phone. So they double click the button to use their credit card and the first thing it does is comes up and checks your face to make sure, okay, that is really James using that. He can use his credit card with this particular transaction. So pass keys in general, I would say, good idea. There are a couple of little tricks to be aware of. Changing your phone can be a bit of fun. So everything's working on your phone beautifully. I'm going to change my phone. Oh, how do I get all those pass keys across to my new phone? Yeah. Now, there are methods to do that. You just have to be aware that you're transferring your pass keys across as well. Sometimes they're linked to your account on your computer, your account on your phone, for example. But when you transfer that in your computer and your phone, make sure you think, I just better be aware of those pass keys. And sometimes the website will say, oh, I don't recognise this device. we'll check with your other devices. So when you transfer across, for example, to a new device, you might keep your old device going just so you can say, yes, that was me, that's okay. Please share that same passkey with this new device I've got. But I suppose the short answer is, if you see passkey, I would generally say yes. That's not a bad idea, and probably safer than passwords in general, and also easier than trying to remember all those passwords all the time.
Yeah. There's a lot of passwords these days.
Yeah. Another quick thing was just upgrading our solar at the moment. We got our first big solar installation on a house back in 2012, so about 14 years ago.
Yeah.
10 kilowatts on the house, and that was fantastic. That was back when New South Wales had a 60 cents per kilowatt hour scheme.
Yeah.
So it paid for itself in a very short period of time, because that was a very generous rate the government gave us all. Obviously encouraging people to install solar, which worked for lots of people. So that was fantastic back in those days. We've moved forward now. I've been waiting for, we've got 3-phase in our house. I've been waiting for a 3-phase battery to come out. They've now come out. So I'm doing an upgrade of battery and solar panels. But here's the fascinating thing. For the same amount of money we spent back in 2012, when I got 10 kilowatts of solar panels, I'm now getting 43 kilowatts of solar panels and a 48 kilowatt hour battery.
Yeah,
so
right.
that's all bundled for the same price. The other thing that's interesting is when we did that back in 2012, we filled our north-facing roof, which is in the southern hemisphere, is the roof you want to cover with solar panels to get the most out of the sun. You wouldn't think about doing it back in 2012, going on to, some people did western roof.
Yeah.
No one did the south roof because there wasn't enough sun
Yeah.
around. You might have put on the south roof putting up on an angle, but then you get shadowing if you put 2 rows up. So no one really put on the south roof. But now we're actually putting some not only on our west, but on our southern-facing roof face, because the solar panels are so cheap, even though your production is not as high on that south face, you're getting enough out of those because the solar panels are so cheap.
Yeah,
so
right.
it's certainly got more efficient as well. So even if we just filled up our north-facing roof, that would have been probably 25, 30 kilowatts that we would have gotten out of that, just in the progress we've made out of the efficiency of solar panels, but then fill up a few other roof faces and you get 43 kilowatts. So,
and in the summer, in the height of summer, when you're running that air conditioner all day,
Yep.
that'll take care of it.
well, that's right. And you are, when the sun is almost overhead, then you are getting a lot more advantage out of that south face. Now, obviously in winter when the sun's much lower, you're probably not getting much on that south face, but you'll still get a little bit. But again, if you paid a lot for your solar panels, it wouldn't be worth it. But when you're getting solar panels much cheaper, it's worth it. So things are changing. Things are changing very quickly.
Fantastic. All right, we should really get this show on the road with our first story. Now, as a male of 50 plus years, I've learned over time on this planet that I'm pretty terrible at multitasking. That's not to say that I haven't tried or that I don't continue to try. It's just that I'm not very good at it. I'm a 4 out of 10 for multitasking at the best of times. Now, this is one of the reasons it's been a mistake on my part to step into the role of secretary for the various local organisations that I've been part of. Listening, thinking and recording minutes all at once, probably not my forte. Probably downright irresponsible, even, some would say. Wow, that was a cathartic experience. Thanks very much for that opportunity. Thanks, mate. Now, missing key details of what has been said in meetings can come at a cost. Perhaps if I had a good AI note taker before now, Matt, I may have saved myself some headaches.
It sounds to me like you missed a couple of meetings when the elections were held, and you turned up the next meeting. Congratulations, James, you're now the secretary.
Yeah, no, that's it.
It's a rookie year, isn't it? You've got to turn up to the election meetings to make sure you don't get elected.
Exactly.
So an AI note taker is a great idea because exactly as you said, it's hard to write notes and listen. Oh, what did you? Was that
so
important?
other people have the same problem? Clearly.
I think they do. And I actually have rejected the concept of multitasking completely.
All right.
I go worse than you. I don't think I'm no good at it. I think I can't do it full stop. I believe I try and time slice, but I cannot multitask. I cannot do more than one thing at once. What I will do is I'll concentrate on that and then that and then that and then that. So I'll time slice between different tasks, which is a poor way of saying I'm bad at multitasking.
You say concentrate on one thing. I can't even do that. So I get distracted, and so I'm doing And then the squirrel off in the distance, something moves, and I'm off chasing it like Homer Simpson.
And then someone said something really important.
Sorry, why aren't you sitting at the table, James? You should be taking notes.
That's right. Can you say that again? I'll just write it down. So, using a device, and the one I'm looking at is called the Plaud, Plaud, Plaud Note Pro, but there's other ones out there, so it's not just this model, but this is an example of the model. So it's a little device. It's not that large. It's about 2.99 millimetres thick. I'd call that 3 millimetres. So 3 millimetres thick, weighs about 30 grams. It sits there. It's probably the size of a playing card. So if you think about playing cards, so the thickness 3 millimetres, but basically the physical dimensions of a playing card. And you sit there in the middle of the table and you say to everyone, by the way, I've got this taking notes.
Everything you say is going to be recorded.
Correct. That's right. But here's the really cool part. That records everything. We've got devices that can record audio. This is clever. It uses what's called a MEMS. It's a micro electromechanical system for its microphone. So that's a very sensitive, very small microphone. It'll record what people are saying up to 5 metres away. So when two people in the corner having a little off-topic conversation, it'll still record that and that'll be part of the notes. But here's the really cool part. It then uses some AI at the background. So it records it all on the device. It's not uploading as you speak as the meeting's going. It's not real live or real-time translation. It's basically doing that all recording. Then you upload it after the meeting. And then you say, can you give me some action items from the meeting? Can you give me a summary of the notes from the meeting? Can you give me the multi-dimensional summary? So what it will do is it will give you a different summary depending on which user the summary needs to go to. Now, I know in psychology they talk about this concept known as subjective perception or reconstructive memory. So you and I are sitting on the side of the road, we see a car accident, the police come and interview you and they interview me, and they then look at themselves and they say, were those two at the same accident?
Yeah.
Because their reconstruction of what they saw is completely different. So that's a known psychological phenomenon. But this will actually do this deliberately. It will say, James, you need to go and do A, B and C as a result of the meeting. And Matthew, you need to go and do these 3 things as a result of that meeting, because it focuses on what's important to that individual person sitting around the table.
Yeah, right.
So fantastic from that perspective.
But, don't you want meeting minutes to be completely objective, though?
Well, so
if you cut bits out, people go, hang on a second, I don't need a bit of minute.
So I think what it'll do for you is give you the minutes, but then say, here are your actions, James,
items,
and here are my actions, Matthew. You said you were silly enough in that meeting to go, oh yeah, I can take care of that, which is a silly thing to do in a meeting, because then you have to go and do it. But you've got to remember that you said that, because there's nothing worse than going to the next meeting. They said, oh, Matt, you said you'd take care. Oh, I did too, didn't I? What have you done about that? Well, approximately nothing. This stage, but I will now. So quick, send an email off while you're at the meeting. So the whole idea here is let you focus on the meeting, let the note taker focus on the notes, and then you get that summary afterwards. And people can argue about it all they like afterwards. You go, well, there's actually a recording sitting behind all of that that said what was happening from that. But here's a summary of it anyway. And the summary may not be perfect, because AI is not always perfect.
Yeah, so I was going to say that you watch a YouTube clip, and if you bring out the captions these days, if it's something quite specific to something that you know about, it's really interesting to see what words they get wrong. Yeah,
and it is interesting when you send, and it'd almost be like you're sitting around the meeting saying, can you all speak very clearly, please? Enunciate your words correctly during the meeting rather than mumble away.
Yeah, drop the Australian accent.
That's right.
Can you roll your, get your R's a little bit more rounded.
Yeah, that's right. Speak with every syllable enunciated properly. So 30 hours of continuous recording, 60 days of standby. So that's a pretty long meeting if it's going for 30 hours. So again, I just see...
Someone's got to call that up sooner or later.
That's right. I just see this sort of stuff will become almost a bit of a standard, I think, in the workplace, but definitely volunteer committee meetings. I just think this is actually the first place. They talk about this being sold into businesses, but I actually see the first place will be those volunteer meetings, because people don't have the time to have a dedicated person that takes the notes and fills in. It comes down to one of the volunteers and they're all busy, and this is just a brilliant solution for that type of thing, I think.
It is a brilliant solution.
And I know already, I haven't been to a doctor with this, but I've talked to people who have been to a doctor and the doctor has said, do you mind if I take notes with AI? So doctors are already using this type of thing to let them concentrate, because I get a bit frustrated when I see a doctor and then they type the notes into my record and they get their 2 fingers out and they tick, tick, tick on the keyboard, and you go, oh, give me the keyboard, I'll type your notes for you, because their time's valuable, expensive. You don't want them tick, tick, tick with two-finger typing. So having AI note-taking for a doctor is brilliant. This gives us the ability to have this AI note-taking for everyone, sitting around the kitchen table, talking to the kids, whatever. Just let it record your life.
Oh, imagine that. The record of the family conversations. Oh, what's going to come up later? We have come such a long way since the whistling, whirring, hissing and bleeping of dial-up internet. Those clunky ones and zeros that clogged up those copper cables of days of yore. They're a distant memory now. When they started laying fibre optic cables to replace the copper, it was a revelation in the shape of lightning-quick download speeds. There was no turning back after that. But now we have AI jamming up the fibre optic bandwidths because it is just so data heavy. It looks like we're in for another expensive infrastructure overhaul. Or is there a simpler solution, Matt?
There might be a better solution. I don't know if it's simpler, it's probably more complicated, but it's certainly a better solution than maybe the alternatives. It seems like every story revolves around AI at the moment, and it is dominating so much of what we speak about. But just let's go back a step and look at the amount of fibre optic cable we've got just in the ocean. Forget about everything that's run on our land and to our homes and businesses, etc. The estimation is at least 1.3 million kilometres of undersea fibre optic cable, over 400 runs of cable. So some of those runs are fairly long.
Yeah.
So you've got a fair investment already in terms of fibre optic cable. Now, I know we often poo-poo the SI units that aren't the
how many
correct
swimming
SI
pools
units.
does that equal to? Or how many giraffes?
Well, the one that I thought of was we've got Artemis on our minds at the moment. There's a lot of talk about travelling to the moon. So the amount of fibre optic cable we've got at the moment would be able to be run, and this is under the oceans, run to the moon 3 times. So that gives you an idea
That's
of...
a decent distance.
That's a lot of cable. So, and it's actually quite fascinating when you think about those undersea cables, off topic here slightly, but I do find it fascinating. So they bury those when it's close to the shore, so you don't have someone just drag an anchor near shoreline and rip up one of those cables, because I imagine it's expensive to run those cables. But after you run them under the ocean floor for maybe a few kilometres out to sea, then they just drape them along the ocean floor. Some of these cables are 7 kilometres, maybe 8 kilometres under the water.
Wow.
And you can imagine there's a fair bit of pressure there.
Yeah.
So they've got to build these cables to withstand that, and it's not an easy repair job. Oh, no, we've got a bit of a nick in the cable there. Can we just send someone down? Well, no, we
they've
can't
had
actually.
some trouble with ships dragging anchors and things like that. Some of them accidentally, some of them not so accidentally.
Yeah.
So when damage happens at the bottom of the ocean there,
That's right. And when you
It's not
start
an
talking
easy
about
fix-up.
7 or 8 kilometres down, that's not an easy repair job. The other thing is that they, obviously some of these are long runs because you've got some long spans of ocean. You don't have the ability to send those signals all that way without some sort of boosting. So about typically every 100 kilometres, they've got a booster. And you go, well, where do you plug that in? There's no power sockets down the bottom of the ocean. So typically they'll run beside every one of these fibre optic cables a copper DC line that provides power for these boosters that are installed about every 100 kilometres.
The infrastructure is amazing.
That's right. So think about that. And then you think, well, that could go wrong as well. So repairing that, I don't know whether they repair it or they just go, run a new cable. It can't be an easy job to repair. Okay, well, drag it up from the ocean floor and then repair it and then drive back down again. So
I remember there was a story about an Eastern European lady who was digging in her garden and shut down the internet in about 3 or 4 countries when she hit a cable as well. Look, it annoyed some people. Yeah.
That's right.
And they had to work a plan around how they were laying their cable after that.
I hope she had some nice roses after that. She planted those in there. So
You can look that one up. It is a true story, folks.
Yeah, right.
Definitely look that one up.
Right. So if we can take advantage of that 1.3 million kilometres of undersea cable, not to mention all the fibre optic cable on the land, if we can take advantage of that and make it go faster, that's got to be better than laying new cable, because that sounds like an expensive proposition. So researchers have now managed to get 450 terabits per second through some existing fibre under London. Now, to give you an idea of how exciting that is, the previous record from 2025 was 300 terabits per second, but that was in a laboratory setting. So to be able to get 450 terabits in some existing fibre, when you've got things like maybe some connectors that aren't perfectly clean, or you've got some other interference for those particular cables, for example. So to do that in a real-world environment is fantastic. The other SI unit that we need to mention here is how many movies you can stream at once. So
Right.
450 terabits per second is 50 million HD movies at the same time you could stream.
And anyone who remembers trying to download a movie in the early 2000s,
Yeah, so that's pretty
that was
impressive.
an effort.
So basically, to give you an idea of how much better than existing technologies, about 10 times faster than existing technologies. So you think about that, you think, well, that saves us the next 10 iterations of cables we've got to lay out around the world if we can make the existing ones go 10 times faster. Now, how they're doing this is there are 5 different bands that are typically used in fibre optic cables. O, E, S, C and L are the 5 different bands, and they're using different parts of the light spectrum. Essentially, the way they've been able to do this is they've been able to go from 1264 nanometres up to 1617 nanometres, so basically covering all 5 bands in the one cable. Now, in the past, they've typically found you can get one or maybe a couple of the bands that are being used, but when you start trying to combine all the bands, you start to get them interfering with each other, which kind of makes sense. So you're sitting there and say, oh, well, we'll use this particular band for this application in this cable. These researchers have said, well, wouldn't it be better if we could use all the bands? And everyone said, well, that's a silly idea. Well, let's try that. And that's what they've done. They've effectively used all the bands at the same time to then get the maximum amount of bandwidth out of that. So,
and with no interference whatsoever.
Well, I imagine they've encountered some interference, but they've been able to put some sort of technology in.
Some corrections.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. I don't know.
I guess with digital technology, that has increased our ability to make corrections.
Yeah, exactly right. So you've got increased computing power as well. So I think the big thing here would be the hardware at the end, at each end of the cable, would be the secret. So you probably wouldn't install this in your fibre optic connection in your home. You wouldn't need to. But it's really on these big backbones that they're trying to increase that bandwidth, because we've probably got a fair bit of capacity, extra capacity available into our homes. But when you start talking about backbones is where you're really getting it. So probably within 3 years, maybe, you're getting to the stage where this is going to be available commercially, and then someone's going to make a lot of money out of selling new hardware to install at each end of that fibre optic cable run. But pretty exciting. And we used to talk about, I remember talking to technicians years ago about copper, and I remember them saying 24 kilobits per second, that's the fastest we'll ever get. And then 33.6, that's the fastest we'll ever get. And then 56K, and it kept going.
Yeah.
So we managed to keep squeezing more and more out of our copper, and we probably are at the point now where we really are at the absolute limit of copper, but it's a lot further than we ever thought it would be.
Yeah.
Well, fibre, we're still working out what the limits will be with fibre optic cable. Yeah, so quite fascinating.
So cool. Flying cars and robot maids. The Jetsons gave us a glimpse of the future that just might be. Now, they were aiming for about 2060. They were definitely onto something with FaceTime as well. They smashed that one out of the ballpark. But moving sidewalks, travelators, horizontal escalators, they were a great idea in theory, but it's only been the architects of airports that have really taken that ball to run with it. Matt, why is it that I'm forced to walk from store to store when I'm going down the street, even as late now as 2026?
Now, listeners have probably worked out I am a bit of a Seinfeld fan. I do remember a Seinfeld episode where Jerry suggests to George that we should have moving sidewalks, and of course that's an American term, we would call them footpaths, but moving sidewalks, and then that was it. Jerry couldn't get it out of his mind. He just said, I can't walk anywhere anymore. I just imagine that if we had moving sidewalks, I could just stand there. And so that was his obsession for that entire episode. So there's a good reason for an obsession, because the whole idea of moving walkways, moving footpaths, moving sidewalks goes back to 1872. And New York City had this congestion from horses, carts and pedestrians, and they were competing for this same space. This is before cars came along and threw things, or a bit of a spanner in the works there. And so there was a gentleman, Alfred Speer, who proposed an endless travelling sidewalk. He wanted to go up to 16 miles an hour, so about 26 kilometres an hour. It had multiple tiers.
That's fast.
That's fast, I know. It had seating areas, had continuous boarding, no rating required. So not like a tram, you've got to wait for it to turn up.
Yeah, but you got to get a fair bit of a run up to get up to 26 kilometres an hour.
So they actually had some clever ways to get around that where you had slower footpaths that stepped up to that. So you presumably stepped onto one and then onto another to get up to that speed.
And you could maybe choose to go on the slower one.
That's right, maybe stay on the slower one. But the New York legislature actually approved it twice to actually have these installed. And for some reason the governor said, no, I'm knocking that back. Maybe he didn't get paid off enough, I'm not sure. But there was some reason the governor knocked it back twice. And then they had railways and then cars who kind of took away some of the focus for that. But then 1893, the Chicago World Fair, over 800 metres of moving sidewalks with speeds a bit more reasonable, around about 6 kilometres an hour, so a bit easy to step onto.
Walking pace.
That's right.
Fast walking
but you
pace.
could stand there, James.
Yeah.
You could stand. You didn't have to walk. You could stand there.
But fewer people would have been injured.
Well, that's right. In 1900, Paris's World Fair had about 3 kilometres of moving sidewalks, so it all sounded pretty good. And then in the 1900s, there was a proposal to have underground moving sidewalks, which I don't know why you wouldn't just put it above ground, but anyway, that was a proposal, up to 14 kilometres an hour. Then you had subways come along. Okay, that was a bit faster. So all these urban planners around the 20s and 30s proposed these different speeds. They got up to a patent on one that was 40 kilometres an hour, again, in this stepped process that you would get onto this one going at 40 kilometres an hour.
So I'm just thinking about things like bird strikes. You're just going down the street to the shops and you're on the 40 kilometre an hour one, and some silly pigeon gets in your way.
That's right. It sounds dangerous, doesn't it?
And next thing you know, you're like, what was his name? Fabio on the roller coaster.
Yeah.
Sorry. There's a memory from the 90s.
So there was some systems and they installed in airports, which is where we see them now, but early systems weren't great, and there was actually a fatal accident in the 60s. Someone died on a moving sidewalk. So that probably put a bit of a dampener on things for a while. So
so there was a moving sidewalk and there was a person on, not doing 40 kilometres an hour.
No, it wasn't 40 kilometres an hour, but there was an accident where someone fell onto it and then obviously...
Well, people get nervous going on escalators, right? Because because it's moving and they don't want to get caught by the teeth.
Well, the funny thing I find when you're at an airport on a moving sidewalk, a moving footpath, is when you step off it. Because I tend to walk on them rather than stand still. So you're walking along there and you're going at a certain pace and then you step off and you almost stumble over a little bit sometimes because your head pace has changed even though your feet pace has stayed the same. So that's obviously, and they're probably only going, well, no, what are the current ones going? Probably 6 kilometres an hour. That's probably walking pace or thereabouts. It probably is about that. So in general, we're probably going to see a bit more of this as urban planners try and get cities that are more walkable rather than so many cars. And so as we see some of these cities built from the ground up, where they say, we're going to build this whole city to be friendly for humans, not friendly for cars, they're going to see more and more of this. So don't be surprised if you see more of these moving footpaths and maybe not 40 kilometres an hour, but maybe faster moving footpaths. I like the idea of that.
The age of the Jetsons. We're pleased to announce that the list of excuses for not buying EVs as your next car just got a whole lot flimsier. Matt, you're going to tell us that the next generation of batteries will have ultra-fast charging and be ultra-durable. ICE vehicles are looking more and more antiquated.
Oh, it's getting exciting. And let me just go back a little bit here. 1876, Nicholas Otto invented the four-stroke engine, which is still the basis for our current engines. 1885, Carl Benz created effectively the modern motor car using an internal combustion engine. 1892, Rudolf Diesel patented the diesel engine, which, as we know, doesn't have a spark plug, uses compression for its ignition, and it's more efficient. Diesel fuel itself has got more energy and great for heavy-duty use. Those first engines were noisy. They leaked oil. I remember seeing a car show one day and the guy was showing me the engine under the bonnet and all the tappets were exposed and he had a little oil can that he would squirt on. He said, when I drive this car about every 50 kilometres, I pull over, open up the bonnet and squirt my oil can on the exposed tappets. So you've got noisy, clunky, all these sort of old engines.
The need for the extra resources.
Exactly right. And the efficiency level of those early engines, they said, even the good ones in those early days, maybe they converted 10% of the energy in the fuel to actual motion. The rest
ran
of it,
hot.
Yeah, they ran hot, noise. So they lost a lot of the energy in noise and in heat, which modern engines still do now. Go now to 150 years after that first four-stroke engine, and we've got fairly sophisticated engines. We've got fuel injection. We've got timing much better. We've got fully enclosed engines. We don't have tappets exposed anymore. We've got overhead camshafts. We've got turbos, all these things. And our efficiency has now risen to about 40% of the fuel that goes in to actual forward motion.
It's 150 years well spent.
That's 150 years of research. That's right. So when people look at the modern EV and they poo-poo all sorts of things about it, you say, well, hold on. 150 years ago, people were poo-pooing the modern engine, or the engine of the day.
Why would you need one of those when you've got perfectly good horses?
That's right, horse and cart. What? You've got to stop and refuel it. You've got to oil those tappets. And guess what? They didn't have service stations everywhere. So people would fill up their jerry cans, or I don't know if they were jerry cans or some container, and they would take that with them. Even getting punctures at the time, you had to learn how to fix a puncture. It was 1900 before they came up with the idea of a spare wheel that you would carry on the vehicle. So you've got a lot of development that's occurred in motor cars. So put all that in the back of your mind and think about how long we've been really developing the modern EV. And I'd say maybe 15 years, maybe a little bit more than that, but it's really been faster development over the last 15 years. So it's no surprise that we haven't covered all the things that the internal combustion engine's covered in its 150 years. But we're getting close. So Donut Lab out of Finland, they've come up with a commercially ready solid-state battery. Everyone talks about solid-state battery being the future of batteries. When we get solid-state battery, that's when I'll buy one of those EVs. That's when they'll be right to go. They've got one they believe is commercially ready. Now, what's better about it? Well, have a listen to this. Your normal lithium-ion battery, for example, maybe 2,000 cycles, and that's your phone as well as your car, before you've got enough degradation you might want to replace that battery. Well, a solid-state battery, maybe 100,000 charge cycles before you finally go, I've had it. I bought that battery 50 years ago. It's time to get rid of it and trade it in now. So, and I'm a bit worried about that because some car manufacturers will go, we don't want a car that lasts 50 years. We don't want a battery that lasts 50 years. How am I going to sell a new car? Yeah. So the first thing is the number of recharge cycles, incredible. So that's fantastic. The second part is that the charging speed, the 0 to 100%. Now we know, we've talked about it before, typically charge times with lithium-ion is charged to or quoted to 80% because it slows down dramatically after 80% to protect the battery. They're talking about 0 to 100% in 5 minutes. Now, that's a big claim because in your mobile phone battery, you can plug it into a 240-volt outlet here in Australia and that'll give you enough charge to be able to do that. But when you're plugging your car in, if you've got a 80 kilowatt-hour battery, the simple physics of that means you've got to have a huge amount of power going into that to be able to charge it up in 5 minutes. So I would guarantee at the moment there are not the chargers out there that would actually allow you to fully charge a battery. If the battery could handle it, wouldn't be able to fully charge it because a lot of those chargers are 150 kilowatt, 250 kilowatt. There's not enough charge in that to be able to fully charge that. But that's a problem that can be solved. We know how to solve that problem. We just don't know how to have a battery that can handle the capacity. But hold on, now we do with a solid-state battery. So that's pretty impressive. And then people are worried, of course, about the range of the battery. How far can you get out of it? And I'm not that worried about it. I've got cars that do 500, 600 kilometres. I'm happy to drive that distance and then plug in and charge up while I have a cup of coffee and then keep going on my trip. But people are obsessed by 1,000 kilometres. And so, again, the energy density in a solid-state battery is much better than a lithium-ion battery. So suddenly, 1,000 kilometre range on a car is not that far away using solid-state batteries.
Goodness me. So we're, it's just getting so exciting,
this
EV front.
It is. And people are then saying, oh, well, I won't buy one of the current cars because that battery will be worth nothing in the future. Well, there's still a bit of development to go, but Verge Motorcycles has said that in their 2026 models, that's this year, in their models coming out at the end of this year, they're going to be using the Donut Lab battery in their motorcycle. So fast charge, recharge cycles, good energy density. So all of that's pretty exciting as far as batteries are concerned. But we've said it many times. I guarantee there's a lot of companies out there working on a better battery.
Better batteries,
because there's money to be made with all of these cars being produced. Yep. So whether it's Donut Lab or whether it's ABC Proprietary Limited that hasn't even thought about a battery or doesn't even exist yet, we will continually get better batteries, the same as we continue to get better motors over all those years. Every company will come out with a new motor. This one's more efficient. This one's more powerful, whatever it might be. That'll keep happening with electric vehicles. So buy one now, get into it, and then sell it in a few years' time to someone who's a later adopter and get the next model that comes out.
Well, I'm really looking forward to looking back in 5 years' time at this particular story here and just seeing how far we've gone since the announcement of this solid-state battery.
Well, you heard me talk about our solar panels at the beginning of the show. In a mere 14 years, how far we've come, how much cheaper they are, how much extra capacity. I'm going to have more than 4 times the capacity on my roof in a mere 14 years for the same cost. Like, that's incredible. So, and whenever you get into it, people say, I'll wait until.
Yeah.
But you don't wait. You just get into it now. It'll keep developing. And even if you wait until, there'll be something else that'll keep developing.
There's something more coming later.
Because we're humans. We want to keep improving it. We want to keep making it better. So, but that's pretty exciting for solid-state batteries.
In recent years, we've seen an increasing trend in ICE pickup trucks on Australian roads. Those ones that take up 2 car parks and require a stepladder to get into, you know what I'm talking about. But the range of EV options just keeps on growing, and people would be familiar with the BYD Shark that's been matching the trend of those big Yank tanks. But the winds are changing, and the winds of change are blowing strong, and these enormous Yank tank models of truck now have a new EV challenger. It's a thankful return to the much more modest, practically sized ute model of old. It's the Slate truck EV. It'll carry a big load, and it's even going to fit in a standard car park, Matt.
And I won't say the brand name because I'll be in trouble from someone if I say a brand name, but one of those big utes that you're talking about, when you see them parked, and we've got front-end parking in our city, you see them the back sticking out so far.
Still.
And you look at the front, and the front tyre's hitting the curb, hitting the gutter, and it still sticks out. But then I've seen ones that when you unlock it to get in, a little extra step comes out because you do need an extra step to get into them. So they're big. And then you see people just...
And they're wide. But I still don't think the trays are as big as what we used to have.
No, I think you're right. They build the cabin so big for comfort, and they've got these huge engines in them as well, which
and
you need to
tiny
carry
little
that around.
trays.
Yeah, that's right. So, and then you see people dropping the kids off to school and them all picking up the shopping. So the Slate truck is going the reverse of everything else. It's a bit of sometimes in business I talk about swim upstream. What everyone else is doing, sure, you can join in and go downstream with them all and you'll end up at the same place, but maybe you should swim upstream. Maybe there's something to be... Yeah, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But what Slate have said is we think there should be a model out there for people who just want a simple EV. They don't want all the fancy features.
Who actually want the truck, the ute, to be able to carry stuff because they're going to carry stuff.
That's right.
So they want to be able to have enough space in it.
And so they don't really need a stereo. They don't really need power windows because, let's face it, how often do we wind our windows down? Not very often. I remember a very early car we had when I was a kid, and we had some friends visiting and they were a bit flash. They had a Volvo. And when they got in the car, they said, where's the air conditioning? And my mum wound the window down and said, there you go, there's the air conditioning. So you don't necessarily need all these fancy features, but you think about it, how often do you wind down the windows in your car? Because you get in, you've got the air conditioning on. And so it does.
Do you know, I did so this morning and it felt weird. This is just a pure coincidence. And there I'm driving with the windows down. It's like, it was a feeling of liberation, but it was like, I haven't done this for a long time.
And you need more than one, don't you? Because if you get one down, you get the thump, thump, thump. Yeah. So having a manual window wind, I mean, a lot of people will get in the car and wonder what it was, but having a manual window winder is probably not the end of the world because you're not winding the windows down very often. So no stereo. A lot of people, they might put their headphones on, earbuds, whatever it might be. No fancy paint job. Do you really need a fancy paint job? Well, maybe if you're trying to impress someone, but really you just don't want it to. The whole idea of paint is to stop the car from rusting, and then, hey, we can make it look pretty as well. So they've gone back to basics. They did actually have a bit of a debate internally about air conditioning, and they did say, we're going to stick with that. Even though I remember many cars in the early days had no air conditioning, even though you could save a bit of money, they've said, no, that probably is just a core essential in a vehicle.
Yeah,
now. So,
I would say that could be a deal breaker.
Yeah, that's right.
But I like the idea of, this is for the people who aren't about the nonsense, who aren't about the show, about the peacocking.
Correct.
They just want something that's functional and is going to do the job, and so they don't want to pay the extra money for the peacock.
For all the fanciness. And so for $20,000, you're buying an EV ute. I mean, I know they call it a truck in the US, but we would call it a ute. So you're buying an EV ute for $20,000, and you've got basic range in the base model, 240 kilometres, and they also make a range that gives you 386 kilometres. But again, for a lot of tradies, they're running around town, running around the city. Most of their jobs involve driving 5 kilometres to pick up some gear and 5 kilometres to go to the job site.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily going out on big jobs. So I like the idea. I hope it sells well. I hope that people grab this and say, we just want a basic car. And that's all I can afford, cost of living pressures.
Yeah.
I want an EV. And a lot of people say, I'd have an EV because fuel's so expensive, but the car's so expensive. When you start talking about, and that's $20,000 US, it's a US-based vehicle at the moment.
Yeah.
When you start talking about $20,000, you start to go, well, no, the cost of the EV is not that much anymore. So there's a really basic model. So I'm interested to see how it goes, whether people do want the fanciness or whether they're okay with just something that's practical.
Well, they got my vote at least. For people living in an urban or suburban zone, owning an EV just makes sense, particularly if your commute is typified with a top speed of maybe 60 kilometres an hour. Let's be real, if you're in the city, it's probably going to be 40 kilometres an hour, and in heavy traffic. But owning an EV has more potential now that V2G technology is available. Matt, even if the EV is the second or less preferred car, one used for short trips maybe to the shops and such, having an EV doubling as a house battery is becoming more and more financially enticing.
It's pretty exciting. So let's talk about the concept here briefly. Home batteries, typically people buying home batteries, they may be buying 5 kilowatt hours, maybe 15, maybe 20 kilowatt hours in their home battery because they're expensive. So you want to put in something that is all you need, but maybe not more than you need. Probably covers you in summer when you've got a good solar feed in, but maybe in winter, maybe not so much, maybe spending more on heating. But most batteries in EVs are 60 kilowatt hours, 80 kilowatt hours. I remember my first Tesla was 100 kilowatt hours. So you're getting some decent batteries in those. And the theory here is if you're home during the day, and maybe on weekends, maybe you're at work during the day, but on weekends you're at home, in the middle of the day, you've got lots of solar energy and you're probably not using it all. So you want to put it in your battery. Oh, damn, I've only got a 15 kilowatt hour battery. So where am I going to put all that excess power? Well, feed it back to the grid. You might get paid a couple of cents per kilowatt hour.
A couple of cents these days.
Yeah, that's right. And if I can store that power somewhere, well, I could use it, but also I can sell it back to the grid when it's more expensive. Say, for example, nighttime, people cooking food early in the morning before much solar kicks in. People are kicking off their day. They're using the stove, etc. Where can I put that power that I can take advantage of it? Well, if you can plug your car in with V2G technology, vehicle to grid, then suddenly, middle of the day, charge up your car. During the night, use your battery that you've got, but use your car to either power your house or sell that back to the grid. Now, the first thing you think of is, well, that's no good because the next morning I want to drive the car to work and the battery's flat. So you balance it. You don't use all the car battery up to then have a flat battery in your car in the morning because that would be useless. But there's probably times when you don't need all that battery power. You might use 10 kilowatt hours, 15 kilowatt hours of that. And if the next day all you're going to do is drive into work, well, I only need to get 20, 30 kilometres, so I don't need to have a full charge battery.
And that's the other thing. Yeah, a lot of people on the weekends aren't doing much on the weekends. They're not necessarily travelling here, there and everywhere.
Yeah.
And so you've got this car sitting in the garage that could be serving you. Other people will rationalise and they'll say, well, it might be worth it to take public transport for a little bit and leave the car in the garage to serve the house.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just another option. And V2G is just fantastic technology.
It is. So you've already got the Nissan Leaf. They did a trial in Canberra with 50 Nissan Leafs plugged in and did a V2G trial with those. And just to experiment with that. There's been some trials done overseas as well. And in a mid-sized city, the estimation was that if you had 10,000 EVs that were participating in V2G, so not all plugged in at the same time, but participating in this concept with the variability that might have, that would be enough to stabilise the grid for the fluctuations you might get. So in a mid-sized city, what's that, 1 million people, maybe 500,000 people? It's not a huge population percentage that would need to give you 10,000 EVs to be able to plug into that. So that's pretty exciting, pretty interesting. Hyundai, I know, are signing up to this. Kia, BYD, all of those have either got V2G vehicles now or they're bringing out models that have V2G. Tesla are a notable holdout, And maybe because they sell a Powerwall. Maybe they don't want you to use the Tesla vehicle because they want to sell you a Powerwall.
They've got ulterior motives.
And about half an hour before we started this recording, I saw an email come through from Tesla just reminding me that I could buy a Tesla Powerwall. And here was a special they've got going at the moment. So maybe they were listening to me while I was talking away out loud about my notes for this. So it is quite interesting. The estimation as well is that we might have in this country, and maybe this is ambitious from the government, so I'm not sure these numbers are real, just maybe a target, about 1 million EVs by the year 2030 and 5 million by 2035. Our vehicle fleet at the moment is about 20 million vehicles. So by 2035, I'm not sure we'll get to 5 million, but that's some estimation or some targets there. That's a lot of cars we could have that could be plugged into the grid, helping us solve our whole grid problem that we might have. So humans, households might be helping a lot more than we realise. If you want to get really clever, some early adopters have actually been using some AI, subscribing to some AI that will then try and manage your usage and your battery and sell it back to the grid when it's the most. And people are making a couple $100 a week out of using their car as part of a grid solution because you've got all this extra power with the battery. So it's quite fascinating where we're going with all of that.
Absolutely. Have you ever received a package where the size of the box seemed so ridiculously large for the size of the goods inside? It's so wasteful in so many ways. Well, Amazon may be about to lead a revolution where they once were the leaders of the wasteful packaging, shall we say. They're thinking outside the box, Matt, and hopefully creating a pattern for the more sustainable e-commerce.
They're thinking inside the box and outside the box with this process. And I've seen two things. One, exactly as you said, you open up, you receive a box, you go, what's that I've ordered? I thought I just ordered some small package. And you open up this big box and there's a little tiny package in there, either by itself bouncing around or with a bunch of foam or some type of packaging around it. And you think, wow, that seems like a wasteful process. The other one that I've seen is when I get a box, which is a brown cardboard box with the brand of the company that sent it to me on there, and I open that box and almost a perfect fit inside that is the box with the product inside it. And you think it's like a Russian doll, the Russian dolls.
The babushka doll.
Yeah, that's right. You pull out one and then inside that there's another one there. Yeah. And so you think surely they could do better than that. And that's probably been the main focus of Amazon is, yes, let's see if we can have smaller packaging for smaller parcels or smaller items, but can we ship products in their existing packaging? And that's where they've shown AI at this problem, and they believe they've done this 18 times faster than if they had humans assessing it. So they've gone through a whole range of criteria and they said, let's look at the box, let's see how it's packaged, let's see the protection around that particular item inside. And the thing that I think of, and where I've seen that one where it's been 2 boxes inside, has been toner cartridges. Toner cartridges are pretty well packaged already. Yeah. And then you open the cardboard box and then inside that is the manufacturer's box and then you open inside that and there's a toner cartridge. And so that's one they've started shipping already where they say that toner cartridge doesn't need another box around it. Mm-hmm. And are you really worried about someone seeing that you received a toner cartridge?
Yeah.
If you order things from an adult content site, maybe you want another box around there, but from a toner cartridge?
So this is it. Now, anytime someone gets a brown box now, it's products from an adult site.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
I wonder what he's got in there.
Everything else is revealed for everyone to see.
So in 1 month so far, AI from Amazon has identified 12,000 products that have been suitable for shipment without another box around it. And that sounds pretty impressive for a start. So they're attacking it at both angles, as I said, either the small parts or the one that doesn't need a package around it. And we'll get better as we get lazier and lazier. I've talked about it before. My daughter's the worst culprit. Is just there'll be something 50 metres away. She'll still order it to be delivered there. So as we get lazier and lazier, as we get to the point where we just want everything delivered to us, then we need to get better ways to package those and deliver it. So Amazon is attacking that head on, which I think is a great idea.
Yeah. We talked about how hard it's becoming to verify your identity last week. Now that AI is learning to create deep fakes better than ever before, it's a real problem. Passwords are no longer enough, and even two-factor authentication has its workarounds for the schemingest of crims. Biometrics are all well and good, but even they are not completely secure. And so, cybersecurity boffins continue to look for uniquely identifying features to keep the hackers at bay. And they may have found a new one, but it's all in your head, Matt.
It's all in your head. And in the movies,
Literally.
In the movies we see that some guy, bad guy, good guy, whatever, has his finger cut off so they can still get access to his bank account or whatever.
I saw one where they used an eyeball as well.
That's right, pop the eyeball out and do that. Or faces. I've seen ones where they have a dead guy on the ground and they put his phone in front of his face on the ground and that's it. Oh, there we go. We're into his phone and away we go. So all of those are feasible. The eyeball, sometimes they do look for live eyeball when you do a retina
needs
scan.
A blood flow.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
for the sake of a movie and not
right.
a particularly A-grade movie.
No. So, but the facial scan definitely would work and the fingerprint scan definitely would work.
Yeah.
So we've got ways of getting around it. Not that I'm encouraging people to go and cut someone's finger off.
Folks, your life of crime doesn't need to begin because of this podcast.
No, that's right. Don't take this as advice. So there's a company that has developed a concept called Vital ID. And this is something that I think would be very difficult to do, one of those things we talked about in the movies. What it does is it takes a vibration, essentially, from inside your skull. And it does a few things. It uses your breathing pattern, your heartbeat, and then the size, thickness, shape of your skull.
And the way you sing a Gregorian chant.
Well, maybe you can add that in.
You get those vibrations occurring in your skull.
And then with all of that, it will say, I know this is. That's unique. Now, if the person is no longer living, or if the person is trying to replicate someone by having some sort of format of their skull or their head, for example, their face, a mask, none of that's going to work because it's pretty hard to replicate all of those unique parts. Now, I did think about this, and I know some people that I think there'd be a fair few vibrations going around inside their head because there's not much else inside their head, but this would take account of that. This would say every skull is unique, every vibration is unique there.
This blows me away that someone thought of this. Or I guess this is another example of someone did some experiments and realised that there's this vibration that occurs in your skull.
Yep.
And then someone's gone, hang on, I wonder if the vibrations are the same for everyone.
Let's test it out.
And then someone else has gone, well, if they're not the same for everyone, we should use it for cybersecurity.
Now, here's the cool part about that. This allows you to continually identify the person using the computer or the phone, whatever it might be. So, for example, you log on once, so you scan the face in front of a dead person laying on the ground on their phone, and you're into it, and then you keep using it, but then it would be looking at your face and then go, hold on, something's wrong here. So it's not continually updating that. The issue here is that it relies on something on your head. So if you've got a VR headset, headphones, something on your head to pick up those vibrations.
You have to wear a stack hat for this, aren't you?
You're going to have to wear something, yeah. They're good enough. The existing over-the-cup headphones or some type of AR or VR headset, they're already good enough without any modifications for this software to pick up those vibrations, but you would have to have something on your head. So if you're sitting there using your computer without any earbuds or anything on your head, it's not going to work. But that's today. Maybe tomorrow they'll work out a way that your phone's camera and microphone are enough to be able to use this technology to be able to identify that. So, because I think the big thing for me here is that the constantly authenticating the user. I think that's really important. Even forget about crime scenes out of movies. Just think about the under-16s social media ban in Australia. Maybe some kids get parents that are willing to help out and they log on with their parent's face and then the kid goes and uses it and it's not continually identifying that it really might be a child using that. This would get around that and would be continually identifying the person that's using it. So it's just more ways amazing. We've got of identifying us and trying to keep the scammers at bay until the scammers work out a way to replicate a head, maybe. I'm
just surprised that my skull's vibrating.
Well, yours is. I'd say some, maybe not so much, or some maybe more.
For our nursing mums, particularly the first-time nursing mums, feeding times are both a beautiful time to connect with your child and simultaneously a key source of elevated anxiety. So I'm told. I have best second-hand experience at this. I cannot protest anything more than that. The worry that your child is getting enough from your breastfeed is a major distraction. At least with bottle feeding, you can measure to the milliliter what the baby has taken in. Breastfeeding is an art form that comes at the cost of confidence. But a new non-invasive piece of technology may alleviate some of the worry, Matt.
Isn't it wonderful that we have something that's as old as the human race itself, breastfeeding? And I'm just trying to imagine the very first babies and the very first mothers, I'm assuming, were breastfed. I don't think there were bottles that they bought down at the
If we want to go back through
supermarket.
evolution, it was well before even we became Homo sapiens. But
Yeah, so it's been around for a little while. And now applying some modern tech to what is an age-old solution to a problem, in other words, feeding a baby, I just think it's fantastic. And you're right, I remember when my wife, we've got 4 kids, and my wife breastfed all of those, but it was always, has the baby had enough? Because they seem to have stopped eating. Is that enough now, or do I need to say keep staying there? And so that does create some anxiety. And
well, confidence would have built for your kids and your wife with each subsequent child, but it's still there was still that lingering thing that I know that my wife was concerned that she wasn't sure that the baby had had enough.
And then you weigh the baby and you make sure the weight is going up, and you're looking at a graph of the average child and the average weight and all the rest of it. So you're applying all these different things, but you'd just like to know that there was enough there. And so this is a really clever little way that they just have a little sensor, and it's not that big. It's about the size of a 20-cent piece, and it sits there on a little adapter that sits over your breast while you're feeding. And it actually monitors the flow of milk, not just through volume of flow, but just the way your breast is changing while the feeding's happening. Wow. And so then you've got an app that gives you real-time data as to how much is actually come out, what the volume has been. Now, you calibrate it first of all. So you might do a pump with a normal bottle where you can actually see exactly how much milk you produce. Right, 100 mils there, calibrate that. I type in 100 mils. The device knows that on that particular breast, 100 mils looks like this. From now on, going forward, to calibrate it, away we go. We'll give you something that's very accurate in terms of how much milk has been consumed by your baby. And it's simple. It's a very small device that just sits on there. It's a little loop that sits around your breast to actually hold it in place. And then you just sit there with your app and watch and go, yep, had enough now. Thanks very much. All done.
And new mums can have a bit more confidence that the baby's fed, and they can throw all that anxiety into something else.
Correct. That's right. And there's enough things when you've got young kids to throw that anxiety towards. I do like the fact that it's something involving female health. Yeah. I guarantee that males over the years in research, in the early days of medicine and science, there were more males involved, so they focused on the male body. And I'm sure there's lots of things we don't know about the female body because males were more focused on the male body. So more females involved in research now, more females involved in the medical field, then we're getting some more information about the female body, which is fantastic because I think we have gone much further in the male body than the female body. So this is a good thing. It's maybe evening it up. And again, this is just one of those ways that we just see a little bit of help for females and humans going forward.
Fantastic. And that's all we have for you today, folks. The lights are dimming as our cute little hamster slowly runs out of puff. We've got to give this little guy the rest that he deserves. That wheel is going to need a shot of WD-40 as well next time. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
I'm just going back on my social media just to answer all these people that are still worried about EVs, even though petrol prices are going through the roof. And so I can go and answer some of those and allay some of their fears that they've got about the EV not doing the job for them, because people want to go that way. They want to be convinced to go EVs, but they're still holding on to their petrol.
Well, I saw a news story as well recently, and it was talking about still the hesitancy that happens out here in regional Australia. Yep. Well, it doesn't need to happen.
Well, the nice number that I saw the other day was 15.7. That's the percentage of EV sales in the month of March for Australia. So of all the new cars sold,
it's picking up
15.7%. So I imagine when fuel prices go back down, that'll drop back down a bit, but I'm still trying to talk a lot to people and say...
And those people with EVs won't regret that they've got an EV.
I've never talked to someone who said, you know what, I bought an EV, the worst decision I ever made, especially now they're not saying that.
And thank you, folks, for tuning in once again to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Here at Tech Talk, we deal only in the tech that brings you the very best futures. You heard it here. For the best looking into your own future, use only Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. I'm your host, James Eddy, trying very hard to maintain personal control with mixed levels of success. We look forward to your company again next week as we present the next episode in our humble little homegrown podcast series, fresh out of the bag. Hope to catch you then, and don't forget to invite your friends along too.